Art has always been a window into the soul, a way to express the inexpressible. But what happens when the mind that creates the art is in turmoil? In this video, we'll explore the fascinating, often unsettling world of art created by those struggling with mental issues. From dementia to schizophrenia, we'll dive deep into the lives of these artists, uncovering the stories behind their struggle and how it shaped their creative output. Hi there, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are delving deeply into art created by the mentally disturbed. From common mental disorders like OCD to mind-deteriorating conditions like Alzheimer's. This will be a deep dive into how they created it, why they created it, and what the mental state of each artist was whilst creating these masterpieces. Now, before I go in depth on any of these artists, I must state that as an artist myself, I do believe the majority of artists have some kind of mental condition, be it a bit of depression, be it a bit of anxiety. I think one of the wonderful things about being an artist is being able to express one's inner turmoil, one's inner demons, and taking your mental conditions and displaying it on canvas can often be a very therapeutical practice. But without any further ado, grab yourself a cup of coffee, some tea, some Wain and Coke if that is your flavor, and let's dive straight into the art created by the mentally disturbed. William Utermohlen. Now, William Utermohlen, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly, is one of those artists that you've seen on hundreds of YouTube thumbnails at this point covering this topic, and I felt it unfair not to include his work because I think as a case study of Alzheimer's, I think it's interesting to see how one loses sight of yourself when you are suffering with a disease like dementia or Alzheimer's. Born in 1993, Utermohlen was known for his figurative work, which often explored themes of alienation and memory. His life took a drastic turn in 1995 when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, a form of dementia that gradually destroys memory and cognitive abilities. Utermohlen decided to document his experience with the disease through a series of self-portraits, beginning shortly after his diagnosis. These portraits are a heart-wrenching visual diary of his mental decline. In the early portraits, his features are clear and well-defined, but as the disease progresses, his work becomes increasingly abstract and fragmented. By the end of the series, his face is almost unrecognizable, a stark reflection of his fading sense of self. Despite the devastating effects of the disease, Utermohlen's work gained recognition for its raw honesty and emotional power. His self-portraits offer a rare glimpse into the mind of someone grappling with the loss of memory and identity, making them some of, if not the most poignant works in the history of art. Now, I'm sure most of us have experienced somebody in our lives that suffers from dementia or Alzheimer's, and usually it's something like forgetting your spouse, forgetting your children, forgetting where you put the keys. But in Utermohlen's case, he's kind of losing identity of self, and that's one of the scariest things as an artist, is to not know what you kind of look like anymore, how you identify. And I find his work eerily disturbing, but in the same sense I find it beautiful, in the fact that he was still able to create even when he himself didn't know who he was anymore. So I think it's only fair to look at some of his work before the dementia struck to understand the incredible artist that William was before the diagnosis. Wain. Now, before I start, I just hope I'm pronouncing these people's names correctly. I don't know if it's Louis, Louis, Wain, but for the sake of this video, I'll just call him Louis. And just looking at Louis's work, I'm very sure that he'd be very popular today. Louis Wain, born in 1860 in London, is best known for his whimsical and playful illustrations of cats. His work was immensely popular in the 19th and the early 20th century, with his anthropomorphized cats appearing in books, magazines, and postcards. However, Wain's life was marred by tragedy and mental illness, which eventually led to his decline. Wain's troubles began after the death of his wife, Emily, in 1887. Emily had been his muse, and her loss plunged him into a deep depression. Over time, Wain's behavior became increasingly erratic, and by the 1920s, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. His later works reflect his deteriorating mental state. His once cheerful cats became increasingly abstract, often featuring bright colors and intricate swirling patterns that some experts believe are indicative of his schizophrenic hallucinations. Wain spent the last years of his life in mental hospitals, where he continued to paint. His art from this period is a fascinating, yet unsettling exploration of his inner world, where the boundaries between reality and imagination were blurred. Wain's journey from celebrated artist to a patient battling schizophrenia is a poignant example of how mental illness can transform both life and art. Now, just looking at the cats prior to his diagnosis and the cats after the diagnosis, it's quite obvious to see how schizophrenia affected Wain's life. And I actually find both examples quite interesting. I think these cats would be very popular today, both of them. One would be popular in children's books and the other at more psychedelic events. Nevertheless, I think his work is beautiful, and something that always boggles my mind with someone with a mind-altering diagnosis, mental diagnosis, is that the ability to paint still resides inside of them. It's not like he lost much of his technique. His technique is still pretty flawless. If you just look at this psychedelic cat that he painted, I find it extremely beautiful and very disturbing to kind of understand what schizophrenia does to the mind. So let's just look at a few of Wain's pieces and appreciate the artist. David Seymour. Now that's actually the first name I could properly pronounce. Something that I've always found interesting was the ability of a photographer to capture a moment in time perfectly, and no one does that better than David Seymour. David Seymour, professionally known as Chim, was a Polish-born artist who quickly became one of the most influential photojournalists of the 20th century. Born in 1911 in Warsaw to a Jewish family, Seymour's early life was shaped by the political turmoil of Europe. He moved to Paris to study photography and quickly became involved in documenting the social and political issues of the time. Seymour's work during the Spanish Civil War brought him international recognition. His photographs captured the suffering and resilience of the Spanish people during the conflict, and he became known for his ability to deeply convey emotion through his images. However, the war and its aftermath took a toll on Seymour's mental health. He was deeply affected by the horrors he witnessed, and the loss of many friends and colleagues only exacerbated his depression. During World War II, Seymour continued to document the human cost of conflict, focusing on the plight of refugees and displaced persons. After the war, he co-founded Magnum Photos, one of the most prestigious photography agencies in the world. Despite his professional success, Seymour struggled with depression throughout his life. His work, characterized by its empathy and humanity, can be seen as a reflection of his own inner pain. In 1956, while covering the Suez Crisis, Seymour was tragically killed, leaving behind a legacy of powerful, emotionally charged photography that continues to resonate today. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Seymour's photographs really do display the resiliency of the people of that time, but more specifically, I feel he displays the resiliency of the children of that time. Just look at a few of these photographs and tell me what you see. It's almost like the children of that time had to step into bigger shoes and grow up much quicker, which makes sense. It was a war-ridden time. but it's very, very eerily beautiful how he captured these moments, from kids smoking cigarettes to kids with a daunting look on their faces. They look much, much older than they should look in these photographs, and I think David's ability to capture a moment is incomparable to anyone else. Yayoi Kusama. Now, Yayoi Kusama's work I find extremely interesting and very, very beautiful. As someone who also plans out their work tediously, meticulously, and is very obsessed with the finer, small details, I find her work mesmerizing, beautiful, and very, very intricate. There are some very interesting videos about Yayoi Kusama's work, and I will link one of the videos in the description for you guys to check out if you are more interested. But let's dive into Yayoi Kusama. Yayoi Kusama, born in 1929 in Masamoto, Japan, is one of the most influential contemporary artists of our time. From a young age, Kusama experienced vivid hallucinations and obsessive thoughts, which she later identified as symptoms of obsessive-compulsive disorder. Her mental health struggles became a driving force behind her art, which she describes as a way to express and control the chaos within her mind. Kusama moved to New York City in 1958, where she became a central figure in the avant-garde art scene. Her early work, characterized by repetitive patterns of polka dots and nets, reflected her obsessive tendencies. These motifs became a hallmark of her style, symbolizing her desire to obliterate her sense of self in an endless field of repetition. Kusama's work also addresses themes of infinity and the sublime, which she explores through her immersive installations, such as the Infinity Rooms. Despite her success, Kusama's mental health continued to deteriorate, and she returned to Japan in the 1970s, where she voluntarily admitted herself into a psychiatric hospital. She has lived there ever since, continuing to create art from a studio nearby. Kusama's work is a testament to her resilience, transforming her struggles with OCD into a powerful and unique artistic vision. Her ability to channel her inner turmoil into her art has made her one of the most celebrated and influential artists of the 21st century. Now, all credit to Kusama's work. It must take endless patience to create all the polka dots and repetitive patterns that she does, and I have a mountain of respect for her work. If you watch the documentary or the video that I mentioned in the description, you'll see why she's not only a fantastic artist, but a well-respected one at that. She had many, many obstacles to overcome despite her mental issues, and she is one of the most influential artists for a reason. So go check out the video of Kusama's work and let me know what you think of the infinite polka dots. Edvard Munch. Now, without even realizing, the majority of you guys have seen Edvard Munch's work. His most famous work is titled The Scream. And it's one of those pieces that has been parodied, memed into eternity. There are so many different versions of it, so let's just take a look at a few of them. Although The Scream is his most famous painting, he still has a collection of beautiful works other than The Scream. But before we go into that, let's dive just a tiny bit deeper. Edvard Munch, born in 1863 in Lotten, Norway, is best known for his iconic painting The Scream, a work that has become so synonymous with existential angst. Munch's life was marked by tragedy from an early age. His mother died of tuberculosis when he was just 5 years old, and his father passed away a few years later. These early experiences of loss left a deep impression on Munch, leading him to explore themes of death, illness, and anxiety in his work. Munch's mental health was a constant struggle throughout his life. He suffered from anxiety and depression, which were exacerbated by his family's history of mental illness. His father was deeply religious and prone to bouts of depression, and his sister was diagnosed with a mental disorder. These personal experiences fueled Munch's art, which often depicted the darker aspects of the human condition. The Scream, created in 1893, is perhaps the most famous expression of Munch's inner turmoil. The painting, which depicts the figure standing on a bridge, clutching its face in horror, was inspired by a panic attack Munch experienced while walking at sunset. He later described the moment as an overwhelming sense of an infinite scream passing through nature. This painting, along with other works like Anxiety and The Sick Child, reflects Munch's deep fear of madness and his obsession with his death. Despite his struggles, Munch lived a long life, passing away in 1944 at the age of 80. His work has had a profound influence on modern art, particularly on the Expressionist movement, and continues to resonate with audience for its raw depiction of the human psyche. I'm sure that after all that, you guys are all big Munch fans now, and how could you not be? His body of work, other than the Scream, also says so much about his mental state, and the beauty of which he paints is something that is not lost on me. Some of his works are eerily beautiful, and others a bit more on the existential side. But there's one thing that you can never say, is that Edvard Munch did not have an impact on this generation of artists. Now, one thing that I want to make clear in this video is that although these people were mentally disturbed, mentally ill, their artwork should be respected, as the artworks they created were a way of coping with their mental state, a way of expressing the ways that they feel, a way of showing the rest of the world exactly what was going on inside their minds. And that's a beautiful expression. I think many people struggle with self-expression, and I can only imagine how difficult it should be for people who are struggling with some kind of mental health problem. An ethical question I must ask all of you is, are we enjoying the art that the artist created for its expression, or are we merely intrigued by the suffering? Once again, thank you all for joining me on this video as we dissect some beautiful artworks from beautiful artists, and we appreciate what they created. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a comment. Let me know exactly what you liked, what you didn't like, some advice for future videos, as I read all my comments and I try to reply to all of them. Much love to all of you. I'll see you guys in the next one. Smash the like button. Poop diddy scoop. A mice. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you. With his anthropomorphized, my Afrikaans tongue just can't say anthropomorphized.